Can we bring up now People's Exhibit 342? Let's show those to the jury. Do you recognize these? What are these, Mr. Cohen?
These are phone calls made from my cell phone to Alan Weisselberg.
Are these calls between July of 2015 to February of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have Weisselberg's cell phone and work numbers in your contacts as well?
Yes.
Approximately how many calls are there during this time period with Weisselberg?
6 in total.
And was it common for you to speak with Weisselberg outside the office, meaning by phone at other times?
It wasn't common.
Now let's take a look at a call. We'll show the call on October 23rd of 2016 at 4:52 p.m. Do you see that call?
Yes.
What does that reflect?
A voicemail.
Left by who?
From Alan Weisselberg to me.
Do you know whether that was a Sunday, October 23rd?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Was it unusual at 5:42? Withdrawn. Was there, at this time, October 23rd, a reason that you understood that he was calling and leaving you a voicemail?
Regarding the funding and regarding how this was going to get done to fund the non-disclosure agreement.
And did you speak with Mr. Weisselberg over the next couple days in the office as well?
Yes.
About finalizing these details?
Yes.
And can we also take a look at the call on October 25th on this sheet? Do you see another call there?
I do.
What time is that call?
That call is at 7:23 p.m.
Is that generally after work for yourself and Mr. Weisselberg?
Yes.
Was it unusual to speak with Weisselberg after hours by cell phone?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of why you were doing that?
It had to do with the Stormy Daniels matter.
Was there some urgency at this point?
Significant urgency.
Thank you. Can we take a look at now People's 341 in evidence, please? Let's take a look at the call between Mr. Schiller and Mr. Cohen on October 24th at 8:02 p.m. Do you see that call?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it 8:02 p.m.?
Yes.
You called Mr. Schiller, or did he call you?
I called Mr. Schiller.
Do you know why you were reaching out to Mr. Schiller in the evening of October 24th, 2016?
Yes.
Why?
Because I needed to speak to Mr. Trump, and I knew that Keith Schiller was with him.
Why did you need to speak with Mr. Trump at that point in the evening of October 24th?
To discuss the Stormy Daniels matter and the resolution of it.
And did you have an understanding about whether during that conversation you resolved that you were moving forward to fund the deal?
Yeah.
Now, what was the plan for how you were going to fund the Essential Consultants account in order to transfer the money to Keith Davidson?
So I had already, for several months at First Republic Bank before all of this, I had a HELOC, a home equity line of credit on my apartment. That account was paperless, meaning that we wouldn't receive any documents in the mail. And I elected to use money that was in the HELOC because my wife was the CEO of the household and would not understand if there was $130,000 missing from our joint bank account. She would ask me, and I clearly could not tell her, and that would have been a problem for me. So I elected to use the HELOC. And once I received the money back from Mr. Trump, I would just deposit it and no one would be the wiser.
Can we now put up People's 177A in evidence and cull out the text between Mr. Howard and Mr. Cohen on October 25th, 2016?
So this is a text message from Dylan Howard to me, and it states, Keith calling you urgently. We have to coordinate something on the matter he's calling you about, or it could look awfully bad for everyone.
What did you understand that to mean?
This matter, if the matter wasn't resolved, it was going to be catastrophic to Mr. Trump and the campaign.
Did you also have a call on that night, October 25th, 2016, withdrawn? Did you have a call on October 25th, 2016 with Dylan Howard and David Pecker?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe for the jury that call and what occurred and what was said?
Well, it was all about, again, the resolution of the non-disclosure agreement.
And what, if anything, was Dylan Howard telling you on that phone call?
How to get this thing done. She's going to the Daily Mail. This could be catastrophic to the campaign. This will further isolate women from the candidate.
And did you make a request at that time of Mr. Pecker on that call?
Yes.
What did you ask him?
If he would be kind enough to make the payment.
Why did you ask him to make the payment at that point?
To see if he would do it, considering he's been doing it for Mr. Trump before. I figured, why not ask?
What did he say?
Not a chance.
Did he say why?
Yes.
What did he say?
I knew he didn't get the money back on the $150,000 even though they turned out. I cannot do it again. It can cost me my job.
How did you leave things with Dylan Howard and David Pecker on that call? What did you tell them?
Make sure it's locked down. We're going to take care of it.
In other words, who did you say was going to take care of it at that point?
This video was brought to you by my supporters on Indiegogo. YouTube will not monetize these videos, so I can only afford to keep making them with your support. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please donate to my Indiegogo campaign so we can finish this trial. You can find the campaign linked at the top of the description or scan the QR code on screen now.
Thank you. Now, you said earlier, I believe, that you sometimes communicated with David Pecker by Signal, an encrypted application?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's put up just for the witness and counsel and the judge people's 212 for identification, please. Do you recognize that document, Mr. Cohen?
I do.
What is it?
This is text messages on the encrypted app of Signal.
And are these screenshots of the messages and reflected other communications using the Signal application between yourself and Mr. Pecker?
Yes.
Aside from what might be some redactions on that document, is this an exact copy of those communications between yourself and Mr. Pecker?
Yes.
I offer People's 212 in evidence, Your Honor.
No objection.
Received into evidence.
Can we focus on the call reflected here on October 25th, 2016? Mr. Cohen, do you see a flurry of calls on October 25th, 2016 between yourself and David Pecker? You had called him on that date, is that right?
That is correct.
Is there a reason that it shows so many on this screenshot?
Yes.
What was the reason?
Signal is terrible with keeping phone calls. They drop them all the time. We were constantly calling back and forth.
Were there also some calls on October 26th reflected here using the Signal app between yourself and Mr. Pecker?
Yes, ma'am.
Generally, what were these calls about on October 25th and October 26th with Mr. Pecker?
The Stormy Daniels matter, the resolution of it.
Can we please show People's 337 in evidence? And can we show the calls occurring between Mr. Cohen and Mr. Davidson on October 25th, 2016? Can we highlight all the calls on that date? Mr. Cohen, there are a number of calls back and forth between yourself and Keith Davidson on October 25th.
Yes.
Why were there so many calls with Keith Davidson?
In order to ensure that he knew that the matter was being taken care of and that soon there was going to be the transfer of funds in order to have him execute the non-disclosure agreement and the side letter.
What was your goal in having those communications with Keith Davidson?
In order to ensure that that occurred, so I could express to Mr. Trump as an update that this matter is under control.
Did you, in any of these conversations, mention to Keith Davidson that maybe AMI would still do the payoff instead of on your side?
I might have.
Why was that?
I was hoping that AMI was going to make the payment.
But at the end of the day, you knew they were not. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You may take that down. Can you now put up People's 342 in evidence? The calls again between Mr. Cohen and Weisselberg. Can you call out the call on October 25th, 2016 at 7:23 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am. October 25th, 2016 at 7:23 p.m., I made a phone call to Alan Weisselberg.
And how long was the phone call approximately?
3 minutes, 24 seconds.
That was in the evening?
It's in the evening.
After hours, after work hours?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, was it unusual for you to call Mr. Weisselberg after work hours?
Yes.
Why did you have this call with him?
In order to discuss the finalization of the funding and just some particulars regarding funding for the execution of the non-disclosure agreement.
I will take that down. On the morning of October 26th, 2016, did you set up an account for Essential Consultants at First Republic Bank?
I did.
And what did you do?
I went across the street, which is where it was located, and I told them I need to do a transfer.
Now, before you went across the street to set up that account, did you speak to Mr. Trump?
I did.
Can we take a look at People's 349 in evidence, please? Can we highlight the 2 telephone calls on October 26th, 2016, one at 8:30 a.m., 2 calls at about the same time, actually, about 8:30 a.m. You see those 2 calls?
Yes, I do.
How long was the call for?
One is 3 minutes and 20 seconds. The second one is for 1 minute and 28 seconds.
Did you call Mr. Trump before you went and set up the account to make a transfer?
Yes.
What, in substance, did you discuss with him on these 2 calls?
I wanted to ensure that, once again, he approved what I was doing because I required approval from him on all of this. That's what the sum and substance of the conversation was, laying out exactly what was going to happen, what was being done in order to ensure the story didn't get sold to Daily Mail or somebody else.
Did you let him know you were going across the street and you were going to get the account set up and make the payment?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you have made that payment to Stormy Daniels without getting a sign-off from Mr. Trump?
No.
Why not?
Because everything required Mr. Trump's sign-off. On top of that, I wanted the money back.
Thank you. Can you take that down? Now, can you show People's Exhibit 256, please, in evidence? Do you see some either emails or text messages here?
I do.
Who are these communications with on October 26th?
These are communications between myself and Delaney Corp, going back to Patty.
Can you take a look at the texts on that date? Actually withdrawn. You said that you called Mr. Trump at about 8:30 a.m. on October 26th. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
At approximately 9:04 a.m., is that when you reached out to Patty at Delaney Corp to get documentation needed?
Yes.
Why did you email her? I believe it's an email at that time.
Because I needed to get certain documentation in order to open up the account at First Republic Bank.
What sort of documentation did you need? I think it's in the email.
Final receipt.
For essential consultants?
For essential consultants.
Did you have an understanding you would need that for the bank to get it set up?
Yes.
Thank you. Was there some urgency with Patty at Delaney Corp to get it right away?
It was time sensitive, so I was doing my best within which to impress upon her that I needed it ASAP.
Can we take a look at Now People's 368 in evidence? Do you recognize this Know Your Customer form?
I do.
Do you know when you open up accounts with banks that they fill out Know Your Customer information so they know the need for the account? Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Now, did you meet with a representative of First Republic Bank to give them some further information for the KYC form?
Yes.
Withdrawn. Can we take a look at page 2 of 4 of that PDF? Blow up there the description of business narrative. And if could you read that to the jury, Mr. Cohen?
Yes, ma'am. It states, Michael Cohen is opening Essential Consultants, LLC as a real estate consulting company to collect fees for investment. It should say consultation work he does for real estate deals. It is dated October 26th, 2016.
And was that business narrative description on the KYC form true or false?
It's false.
Why didn't you give them the true reason of setting up that account?
To hide the intent of the reason for opening Essential Consultants, which is to pay for a non-disclosure agreement.
Did you have an understanding as to whether the bank may or may not open such an account if you had given them a true reason?
I believe they probably would not.
Thank you. Can you take that down? Take a look at People's 371 in evidence. Do you recognize the documents that are contained in People's 371?
I do.
What kind of documents are these?
This is a document to open up the account as well as a signature card.
And if you can scroll down a little bit, are there also some certificates attached, first of all?
Yes.
What is attached here?
This is the filing receipt for Essential Consultants.
This was required for you to set up the account?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we take a look at page 3 here in terms of the type of business that's on this form?
Yes.
What does it say?
Consulting.
And again, was that a true description of your intent to open up that account?
No, ma'am.
And for the same reasons that you said earlier?
For the same reason.
Can we take a look at the signature pages on pages 4 and 5 of the PDF? I am just asking you, did you sign that form?
That is my signature, dated October 26, 2016.
Thank you. You can take that down. By the way, did you identify Mr. Trump on that opening account document as being involved with that Essential Consultants account at Federal Republic Bank?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because again, it was to protect him and isolate him from the transaction.
Can we now put up People's 372 in evidence? And can you read this? First of all, who is this email from and who is it to?
This is an email from Elizabeth Rappaport, another employee of First Republic Bank on October 26, 2016, to me. Subject, First Republic Bank transfer. The importance. Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Cohen. Per our conversation over the phone, please confirm your request to transfer $131,000 from your HELOC account number ending in 6,194 to your checking account ending in 1897.
And your response? If we could show Mr. Cohen's response.
Confirmed.
Is this consistent about how you were going to, with the plan that you discussed, fund this account to make a payment?
Yes.
And was this email sent to you at your Trump Organization email?
Yes, ma'am.
What does your signature block say on that email?
Executive Vice President, Special Counsel to Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. You can take that down. Can we now take a look at People's Exhibit 284 in evidence? If we can blow up the email a little bit. Do you recognize this email, Mr. Cohen?
I do.
What is this email?
This is an email from Elizabeth Rappaport to me, dated Wednesday, October 26th, 2016 at 4:15 p.m. regarding First Republic's bank transfer. Good afternoon, Mr. Cohen. The funds have been deposited into your checking account ending in 1897. Best, Lizzie.
What do you do with that email? Do you forward that?
I did.
Who did you forward it to?
Keith Davidson.
And why did you forward it to Keith Davidson?
In order to demonstrate to him that the deal is going to be consummated, that we're moving forward with it, to make sure everything stays locked down, that Ms. Daniels is under control.
Thank you. You can take that down. Can we now put up People's Exhibit 168 in evidence? Who is this an email from and who is this to?
This is an email from Dylan Howard dated Wednesday, October 26th, 2016 at 8:23 p.m. Subject is confirmation. It's to me and to Keith Davidson.
What does it read?
Michael, Keith, thank you both for chatting with me earlier. Confirming agreement on it states executed agreement hand signed by Keith's client and returned via overnight or same day FedEx to Michael. Next point was change of agreement to reflect the correct LLC, because I had previously given him the name Resolution Consultants LLC. And the third part was transfer of funds on Thursday AM to be held in escrow until receipt of agreement. Thank you both. Dylan.
Did you have an understanding why Dylan Howard was sending you and Keith Davidson this email?
Just outlining everything that had happened. They too had been very active in terms of helping to secure and lock down the agreement. Not to mention David wanted to ensure that Mr. Trump knew how much time and work that they had invested into making this happen for his benefit.
But just to focus, this is Dylan Howard on this making sure, is it not, that the transaction?
Yes, and Dylan Howard, of course, works for David Pecker.
Can we take that down now and put up people's 366 in evidence? And can we blow up the top of this a little bit so we can see what it is? Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
This is a wire transfer document.
Facet and authorization?
It is.
Can we scroll down just a little bit to your signature? Is this an authorization signed by you? A First Republic Bank document authorizing the transfer of money?
Yes.
What is the date on this authorization form?
October 27th, 2016.
And so, the next day, on October 27th, 2016, did you wire $130,000 payment to Keith Davidson?
I did.
And is Mr. Davidson listed as the beneficiary of wire on this form?
Actually, his attorney-client trust account is.
Can we blow up the description of the purpose of the wire on this form? What does that say is the purpose of the wire?
It states retainer.
And was that truthful or was there a retainer?
No, ma'am.
What was the true purpose of this wire transfer that was made to Mr. Davidson's account?
In order to pay Stormy Daniels to execute the non-disclosure agreement and to obtain her story, her life rights.
So this was not truthful, is that right?
Correct.
That's for the same reasons that you stated earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You can take that down. Can you now please put up People's Exhibit 285 in evidence? Blow that up just a little bit. Can you tell the jury what this email is, from who to, and what it is?
Yes, it's to me from Keith Davidson, dated Thursday, October 27th, 2016, with the subject line, Wire on behalf of Essential Consultants, LLC. It states, 1, confirm that I will work in good faith and that no funds shall be dispersed unless and until the plaintiff personally signs all necessary settlement paperwork, the form of which will match the prior agreement. The settlement documents will name the correct corporation, Essential Consultants, LLC. Plaintiff's signature will be notarized and returned to you via FedEx. Only after you receive the FedEx will I disperse. Fair?
So, and I apologize. Was that the second email in this email chain? Was there a prior email?
Yes.
Can we blow up the prior email? And you can describe the prior email that preceded Mr. Davidson's response. Your email.
Sure. Prior to the receipt of Keith Davidson's response, I had sent to Keith, kindly confirm that the wire received today, October 27th, 2016, shall be held by you in your attorney's trust account until such time as directed for release by me, in writing. Additionally, please ensure that all paperwork contains the correct name of Essential Consultants, LLC. I thank you in advance for your assistance and look forward to hearing from you later. Yours, Michael.
Why did you send this email to Keith Davidson?
I sent it to him to ensure that the wire was received by him, that he had properly corrected the name on the paperwork to reflect Essential Consultants, LLC, and to ask him, direct him as an attorney through his lawyer's IOLA account not to disperse any funds to Ms. Daniels or anyone else until such time as directed by me. I wanted to ensure that I received the executed non-disclosure agreement as promised before they released funds.
At this point, you didn't yet have the signed agreement from Ms. Daniels, correct?
Correct. The signed agreement and the side letter agreement.
Thank you. You can take that down. Now, after you wired that money to Keith Davidson, did you then receive the final non-disclosure agreement and the side letter signed by Ms. Daniels?
I did.
What were the general terms of the agreement? Were they the same as the agreement that had been sent to you on October 11th?
Yes, in consideration for the $130,000 that she had transferred all rights assigned to the life rights of the story, and it also contained states punitive damages of $1 million per violation clause.
Did you let Mr. Trump know once you received it that you had it?
Immediately.
Why did you do that?
For 2 reasons. 1, so that he would know the matter. The task that he gave to me was finished, accomplished, and done. But also, to take credit for myself, so he knew that I had done and finished it, because this was important.
Let's take a look at the agreement first. Actually, let's take a look at the agreement first. Let's put up People's 276, please. Is this the final settlement agreement and side letter agreement signed regarding the Stormy Daniels matter?
This is one page of it, yes.
We can scroll down just so that you see it is the final agreement.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Trump sign this agreement anywhere?
No.
Why not?
Because, again, the purpose of it was to ensure his name didn't appear anywhere, as he's a candidate for the presidency of the United States of America, and this would not have been to his benefit to do so.
Who signed on his behalf?
I did.
Can we take a look at the first page, please, lower right? Do you see some initials for DD?
Yes.
What did that stand for?
David Dennison.
Who did that reference?
That was supposed to be Mr. Trump's pseudonym.
What are the initials put upon that?
EC.
What did that stand for?
Essential Consultants.
Did you put that signature there?
That's my signature, yes.
Did you do that on each of the pages of the agreement?
I did.
Can we take a look at page 14? Actually, page 15 of the PDF where there's some signatures. Blow that up. Do you see a signature by Stephanie Clifford?
I do.
What's the signature below that?
That's my signature on behalf of Essential Consultants, LLC.
What's the date on it?
October 28th of 2016.
Now you'll see that above that there is a line for PB. Is there a signature there?
No.
Is that for the reasons you just discussed?
For the same reason. There's also secondary intent here that since it's an LLC, ultimately, what I would do down the road is just transfer the LLC to Mr. Trump. And it didn't require then to have his signature or anything attached. He would still be the beneficial owner of it.
Can we take a look at the side letter agreement, which is on page 17 of the PDF? Just as a reminder, what was the purpose of this side letter agreement?
This was a document, a one of one, that would identify who the pseudonyms referenced.
Was this the agreement that you said only you were going to have possession of?
Correct.
Who is identified here as being the David Dennison in the settlement agreement?
Donald Trump.
Let's look at the third to last paragraph on page 18 of the PDF. What does this indicate in terms of who would keep the side letter agreement?
Both Keith Davidson and myself counsel for the parties.
Does it say attorney's eyes only?
Correct.
Is that for the reason you described as to keep it confidential?
Yes, that was the whole purpose of this transaction.
Can we take a look at page 18 on the agreement, the signature blocks on the agreement? Who are the signatories on this side letter agreement?
Stephanie Clifford, Keith Davidson, and myself.
The signature line is blank for David Dennison?
Correct.
Is it for the reasons you just disclosed?
Yes, ma'am.
Look at page 19, finally, of the PDF, Exhibit B. Take a look at the signatures there.
Yes, ma'am.
Who signed this agreement, which is Exhibit B of the agreement?
Stephanie Clifford on behalf of Peggy Peterson, and my signature on behalf of Essential Consultants, LLC.
What is the initials below your signature there?
DD.
Was that you signing on behalf of David Dennison?
Yes.
Thank you. You could take that down. You mentioned that you spoke to Mr. Trump about finalizing this agreement. Can we take a look at People's 349 in evidence? Can we take a look at the call between Mr. Cohen and Mr. Trump at 11:48 a.m. for 5 minutes and 16 seconds?
October 28th of 2016. I made a call to Mr. Trump that lasted 5 minutes and 16 seconds at 11:48 in the morning.
Was that the same day that you signed the non-disclosure agreement and the side letter agreement to finalize this deal?
Yes.
What did you discuss with Mr. Trump on this call?
That this matter is now completely under control and locked down pursuant to the non-disclosure agreement.
Did you indicate to him that the documentation had all been finalized?
Yes.
You can take that down. Can we now put up People's Exhibit 180 in evidence, please? I want to direct your attention now to November 4th of 2016. Approximately how many days before the election was this?
Several days.
And did you learn at around this time that the Wall Street Journal was going to release an article with the story about AMI had paid off Karen McDougal?
Yes.
How did you first learn, if you can recall, that an article like this was going to be published?
I don't recall who sent me the text. It could have been Hope or somebody else.
But did you understand ahead of time what the article generally was going to be about?
Yes.
Did you understand ahead of time that in addition to the story being largely about Karen McDougal, that there might be a mention of Stormy Daniels as well?
Yes.
What did you do when you found out that the Wall Street Journal was going to be publishing such an article?
Contacted Keith Davidson.
And did you, before we get to Keith Davidson, did you also contact Hope Hicks?
Yes.
And did you contact David Pecker?
I did.
And what was your effort in contacting folks like David Pecker and Hope Hicks at around this time?
So that we can all coalesce around this issue in an attempt to, again, quell the potential effects that would result from an article like this.
Can we take that down just for a moment and bring up People's 338 in evidence? Can we highlight the calls between Mr. Cohen and Hope Hicks on November 4th, 2016? Do you see a number of calls that day, Mr. Cohen, that you had with Hope Hicks?
I do.
What was the substance of your calls with Ms. Hicks that day?
Getting our hands around this article, figuring out how to change the narrative, and how to quash any of the negative results that would come from it, as it was days before the election.
Did you discuss with Hope Hicks what the Trump campaign's response might be to this article?
Yes.
And what was the gist of the statement that was going to be sent to the Wall Street Journal on behalf of the campaign?
Deny it.
Did Ms. Hicks tell you before? Withdrawn. Did Hope Hicks share with you a draft statement that she was going to send to the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
Can you take that down and put up People's Exhibit 318 in evidence? Do you recognize that?
I do.
Tell the jury what that is. What's reflected in that document?
This is an email from Hope Hicks, dated Friday, November 4th, 2016 to me. It states, "We have nothing to do with this final attempt by the liberal elite to disparage Donald Trump and stop this historic movement. We have no knowledge of this false story allegedly being shopped around, although it comes as no surprise. Yet another publicity-hungry individual with a get-rich-and-famous quick scheme at the expense of Mr. Trump. What she was sending to me was a series of ideas and thoughts to use for the media and to put out to the media. Again, to get control over the release of that article."
Was she sending you several different options for the campaign to spin as a response to this article?
Yes.
And was she looking for you to provide some advice to her?
Yes.
Did you offer your input here on the campaign? The Trump campaign's response?
Yes.
Can we scroll up to your email response to her?
So after reviewing her 4 different options, I thought best. Again, it's the same day, November 4th, 2016. This is now taking place at 5:40 p.m., and I sent this email to Hope Hicks. My comment to her is, instead say, "These accusations are completely untrue and just the latest despicable attempt by the liberal media and the Clinton machine to distract the public from the FBI's ongoing criminal investigation into Secretary Clinton and her closest associates."
Thank you. You can take that down. You mentioned that you also reached out to Keith Davidson.
Yes.
Tell us about, well, first, can we show People's Exhibit 337? Can we call out the 7 calls Mr. Cohen had with Keith Davidson on that day? Did you have a number of calls with Mr. Davidson on that day?
I did.
Describe generally the calls you had with Mr. Davidson on that day.
I wanted to ensure that Ms. Daniels did not go rogue, that any of the people that she had known weren't providing any statements or information regarding this.
Let me ask you also a question. Did you also discuss with him Karen McDougal?
Yes.
Had Mr. Davidson represented Ms. McDougal as well as Stormy Daniels?
He represented both.
What, if any, discussion did you have with him? That article we looked at was largely about Karen McDougal?
It was mostly 95% of it, 99% of it was Karen McDougal.
What, if anything, did you discuss with Mr. Davidson on those phone calls about Karen McDougal?
That she was also under control, that nobody is going rogue here.
In addition to that, did you express any anger at Mr. Davidson for that article?
Yes.
Why?
Because she was his client, and I expected that he would have this under control. Again, it was days before, and I wanted to ensure Mr. Trump was safe.
Were you angry with him?
Very.
Did you think someone on his side had leaked something like this to the Wall Street Journal?
Yes.
Did you indicate to him that somebody might be very upset with him?
I did.
Who did you indicate might be very upset with him?
Objection. Leading.
Mr. Trump.
Sustained.
What, if anything, did you tell him about Mr. Trump during those calls?
That he was really angry, and I truly hope that we don't come back to find out that this is something that you guys did where this is a major problem.
Did Mr. Davidson issue some comments and denials to the Wall Street Journal in response?
Yes.
Were you satisfied at that point?
That was the way he was going to appease me. More importantly, to appease Mr. Trump.
Thank you. You can take that down. Did you also speak with Dylan Howard on November 4th of 2016 about the Wall Street Journal article?
Yes.
Can we show People's 339 in evidence? Can we cull out 4 calls with Mr. Howard on November 4th of 2016?
Yes.
Did you have a number of calls with him as well?
Yes.
What generally did you discuss with him?
The Karen McDougal article.
Was there a concern? What, if any, concern did you? On the part of AMI, was there about this article?
Well, remember that AMI was now in contract with Karen McDougal for the 2 covers as well as the 24 articles that were to be penned. And I was expressing to him also in a rather angry manner that she's now part of your team. You need to get a hold of this and also start issuing denials.
You can take that down. Can you also put up 340 in evidence? Did you also have a number of calls with David Pecker on November 4th of 2016?
Yes.
What generally did you discuss with him?
Same matter and the same statements that I had made to Dylan Howard.
Thank you. You can take that down. Now, can we show People's 262 in evidence, please? Can we pull up in particular some texts on November 4th of 2016 between Michael Cohen and Keith Schiller?
So, on November the 4th of 2016 at 7:26 p.m., I received a text message from Keith Schiller asking me if I can take a call in 30 minutes. My response immediately was, of course.
Thank you. You can take that down. Can we put up People's 341 in evidence now? Can we highlight the calls between Mr. Cohen and Mr. Schiller on 11/4, November 4th of 16? What does this call summary reflect?
This reflects my conversation with Mr. Trump, who was with Keith Schiller at the time.
And the call here is at approximately 9:06 p.m.?
Yes.
For about 5 minutes?
5 minutes, 55 seconds.
Almost 6 minutes. And do you believe you spoke to Mr. Trump using Mr. Schiller's phone at that time?
Yes.
Do you recall the substance of your conversation with Mr. Trump just generally?
Yes.
What was it?
This was a real serious, again, problem, especially being that it was so close to the election day. And I told him exactly who I had spoken to, the sum and substance of my conversations with each of them. David said he, as well, was going to get to the bottom of all of this. I had Dylan Howard on board. I even had Keith Davidson, that we were going to be issuing denials and do everything within our power to protect Mr. Trump.
Was he angry, upset on that call?
Yes.
Did he stress why he was upset?
Because there was a negative story that once again could impact the campaign as a result of women.
Thank you. You can take that down. Now, after the Wall Street Journal article came out with this story about Karen McDougal, largely, did you have some texts with Hope Hicks right after the article came out?
Yes.
Can you put up, please, People's 259 in evidence? Your Honor, is there a time you want to take a break?
This a good time?
Perfectly fine.
Let's take our afternoon recess. You can step out.
All rise, whereupon the jurors and the alternate jurors are excused,
You can step out.
whereupon the witness is excused.
I am not going to rush you. I want to get a sense of how much you have.
I believe I'll be going into some portion of tomorrow.
Thank you.
Whereupon a recess is taken. Part 59 is back in session.
You can get Mr. Cohen.
Witness entering.
Let's get the jury.
Jury entering, whereupon the jurors and the alternate jurors are present and properly seated. Case on trial continued. All jurors are present and properly seated.
Mr. Cohen, when we left off, we were talking about the day the Wall Street Journal article came out about Karen McDougal, and whether you had some texts with Hope Hicks on that day. Do you remember that?
I do.
Can we put up People's 259 now, please, in evidence? Do you recognize these texts, Mr. Cohen?
I do.
Let's direct Mr. Cohen's attention to cells 10, 11, and 12 on the record. Texts dated November 4th of 2016. Can you read those texts?
November 5th. Those are November 5th.
November 5th.
My apologies. Correct. November 5th. That's the day after the article came out?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you read the texts with Hope Hicks on that day?
It's from me to Hope Hicks at 7:35 a.m. So far, I see only 6 stories, getting little to no traction. Hope then responds to me, same. Then she continues with, keep praying, it's working.
What did you mean when you said, so far I see only 6 stories, it's getting little to no traction?
The concern was, again, that this story would explode into a massive issue, and we were monitoring to see the type of traction that the story was getting from other news sources. So far, she only found 6 stories. I found 6 stories, and we were, again, hoping, praying that it was working, that what we did in terms of the denials and reaching out to the various media outlets was suppressing the story itself.
Can we take a look now at cell 13 and 14 on page 2? This is another text on November 5th of 2016. Can you read that?
Yes, again, November 5th, 2016, from me to Hope. Even CNN not talking about it. No one believes it, and if necessary, I have a statement by Storm. Stormy, denying everything and contradicting the other porn star's statement. I wouldn't use it now or even discuss with him as no one is talking about this or cares. Her response to me, agree.
What did you mean here by a reference to a statement by Stormy?
As per the earlier statements that I made, when I had reached out to David Pecker, Dylan Howard, Keith Davidson, the goal was to be able to obtain statements from them and use them and issue denials to the sum and substance of the conver, of the article.
Where you indicated that if you needed to, you could get a statement from Stormy Daniels if you needed to?
Correct.
Now, can you please take a look at cell? Pull up cell 17 and 22 on page 2 at 11:24 a.m. Can you read those texts, please?
This is November 5th of 2016 from Hope to Me. David Pecker's cell, and she responds again. I have it, but he thinks it's wrong. I then sent her David's cell number, contact information. She says, that's the same one. Thanks. I then send a response. He called me from this number this morning. Hope responds to me. The spoke, all good. I think she meant they spoke, all good.
What did you understand her to mean by spoke? All good?
Mr. Trump,
Spoke with who?
I believe with David Pecker.
4 days later, or at that point a few days later, on November 4th. Withdrawn. On November 8th of 2016, a few days later, did Mr. Trump win the election?
Yes.
Now, after Mr. Trump was elected president in November of 2016, was there going to be a continuing role for you at the Trump Organization?
No.
Why not?
Because my service was no longer necessary, as I was special counsel to Mr. Trump and he was now president-elect.
So, with Mr. Trump leaving, would there be anybody for you to work with or report to at the Trump Organization?
No, ma'am.
Was that because you previously reported directly to him?
And only to him.
After Mr. Trump was president-elect, were there some discussions about potential roles for you in the White House?
Yes.
Were you offered a position as Assistant General Counsel?
Yes, it was something that Reince Priebus had offered to me.
Did you want that role of Assistant General Counsel?
No, ma'am.
Did Mr. Trump or anybody working for him on the transition team ever offer you the position of Chief of Staff?
No, ma'am.
Was that disappointing for you, that you were not offered or your name was not considered for that role?
Yes.
Explain. What was the disappointment?
Well, I didn't want the role. I didn't believe the role was right for me or that I was even competent to be Chief of Staff. I just wanted my name to have been included in the fact that I had not once but twice started the campaign, been a surrogate. After all of this going through, I had other ideas for myself, what I wanted, but I wanted to at least be considered. It was more about my ego than anything.
Did some of your friends or your colleagues suggest to you that you should have been considered for that role?
Yes,
Did you indulge some of that conversation?
I did. I indulged them.
For the reasons you explained that you would have liked.
I would have liked to have been considered. It would have been right. Again, it was solely for my ego.
Now, at some point during this transitional time period, so from November to December, did you pitch to Mr. Trump another role for you after he became president?
Yes,
What was the role that you, or the title role that you pitched to him?
personal attorney to the president.
And what were the reasons that you wanted that title? That role, personal attorney to the president?
First of all, I thought that he would need it because there was still outstanding matters that we were dealing with. And every president has a personal attorney. So my thought was, that way I can continue to protect him, to do the things that he needed with these other matters, and it would be protected. I also had another thought in mind, which was consulting. And that's what I really wanted, because it also afforded me the opportunity to stay at home with, or stay in New York with my son, my daughter, my wife. None of them wanted to go to D.C.
Was. When you say it would afford you an opportunity to do consulting, did you have an idea of how you might use this title of personal attorney to the president to your benefit?
Yes.
Explain that to the jury.
Sure. As personal attorney to the president, it opens up a tremendous amount of doors for people who are trying to understand Mr. Trump. Unlike a Hillary Clinton or any other president or politician, they're known. They have a history. Mr. Trump was an enigma. He was a businessman, and nobody knew what his feelings were, what his positions were on a multitude of different areas. Because of my close proximity to him for a decade, I did understand it. And I started to receive early on. Literally, when I was literally the day after the election, people would say, hey, this is a great idea. There are people who are going to want to speak to you because they need to formulate their next 4 years of his presidency to benefit their business.
Did you think that in a way that you could monetize your being personal attorney to the president?
Absolutely.
In what way monetize?
With consulting agreements to various different companies who wanted to understand what his positions, topics, or issues.
Did that become your forward?
Yes.
In December of 2016, pitched to Mr. Trump about your attorney to the president?
I did.
Can you explain that?
Yes. So on several occasions, Mr. Trump would say, so what role is Michael taking? Reince Priebus would say, I'm not sure yet. I've been here 10 minutes. You've been here 10 years. Then we go back to my office and I say to Reince, it's all good. It's all good. It's not what I wanted. So I again pitched to Mr. Trump my interest in being personal attorney to the president. In order to assist me, I actually brought in an attorney who is incredibly knowledgeable in history and presidential history, and he prepared a memorandum. This was like a 3-page memo. And we sat with the president-elect at the time for about an hour, and he went through this pitch, explaining the importance and necessity of having a personal attorney for his own protection and why I fit exactly that role.
Now, in connection with that pitch that you made to President-elect Trump at that time, in that meeting, did you discuss anything with him about potential compensation for that title?
No, ma'am.
Why didn't you?
Because I didn't expect to be compensated. I knew that the compensation was going to come from the companies that were already interested in speaking to me.
Now, did you mention to some other folks at the Trump Organization that you had asked Mr. Trump for that title of personal attorney to the president?
Yes, ma'am.
Was one of the people that you mentioned that to Alan Weisselberg?
Yes.
Did you have discussions with your family about you wanting that title, personal attorney or counsel to the president?
Yes.
I'd like to show just to the witness, please, and counsel and the court, People's Exhibit 258 for identification. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
These are text communications between myself and my daughter.
And what generally do they relate to?
To the position and the fact that I was not being considered for chief of staff.
And are these texts exact copies of text communications you had with your daughter on those issues at the time reflected in this document?
Yes, ma'am.
I offer in evidence People's Exhibit 258.
No objection.
Accepted into evidence.
There are quite a few texts on there. Can you summarize to the jury what's comprised in this text?
Sure. So my daughter and I are very close. We're very much connected. And she was concerned that I was upset that I was not being considered for the role. I explained that Reince Priebus was pushing like a madman early on, but I explained to her that there are so many opportunities. Like what? I said, when they come closer, I'll tell you all of them. At the time, when I was communicating with my daughter, she was at college at the University of Pennsylvania. And I didn't want to get into the ideas that were going on because they were still in a formulation state. And so she asks me, are the opportunities in government or no? And I explained to her, it's a hybrid. And what I was referring to as a hybrid is meaning as personal attorney to the president. I would continue to have my continued access to President Trump, and I would still be able to monetize my relationship and my ability with these various different companies.
Did there come a time, ultimately, that Mr. Trump then gave you that title, personal counsel to the president?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know approximately when that occurred?
It was in January, like a day or two before he left for the inauguration.
You can take that down. Thank you so much. I want to direct your attention to December of 2016, when you were still at the Trump Organization. Before President-elect Trump gave you the title of personal attorney to the president, was it customary in that time period, December of 20? December of every year, actually, for employees to receive an end-of-year bonus?
It was for me.
So, December of 2016, did you find out? Well, withdrawn. How did you generally find out what your bonus was in December of each year?
So, after Mr. Trump would leave, he would be on a plane, or he had already arrived to Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago. Rona would walk around with a Christmas card, and it would be signed by Mr. Trump and others, wishing you a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, etc., and in it would be a check.
And was it?
And that's how you would find out what your bonus is.
So now, in December of 2016, just before you left the Trump Organization, how did you find out what your bonus was?
Rona came and delivered the envelope, the Christmas card.
And that year, December of 2016, was Mr. Trump in the office when you received that bonus check in a card?
No.
Do you know where he was at the time?
He was in flight or had already arrived.
You mean in Florida?
In Florida.
When you opened up the card and saw the check, how did you feel about your 2016 bonus?
Angry, beyond angry.
Why were you angry?
He cut my bonus by 2/3.
And had Mr. Trump at that time in December of 2016 repaid you yet for the $130,000 that you paid out for Stormy Daniels?
No.
And so how did you feel about the situation of him cutting your bonus and then also not repaying you yet for the Stormy Daniels payout?
I was truly insulted, personally hurt by it. I didn't understand it. It made no sense. After all that I had gone through in terms of the campaign, as well as things at the Trump Organization, in laying out $130,000 on his behalf to protect him, it was insulting that the gratitude shown back to me was to cut the bonus by 2/3.
Did you express your anger about the situation to Mr. Weisselberg?
Yes.
Would you tell the jury about your conversation with Mr. Weisselberg about that?
So right after opening it, I actually had to take a double take and then immediately went to Mr. Weisselberg's office in the back and in some very colorful language expressed to him how truly pissed off and angry I really was. This makes no sense at all, but I used quite a few expletives.
Now, did you mention in that conversation with Mr. Weisselberg that he also hadn't repaid you for the $130,000?
Yes, I mentioned the fact that you didn't lay out the money. I did. You weren't prepared to lay it out. I did. And the best that you get for showing loyalty, the best that you get for extending yourself as I did, is have your bonus cut by 2/3. I didn't expect more, but I certainly didn't expect less.
Did Mr. Weisselberg generally know what executives like yourself were getting as bonuses end year?
Yes. Every year, Alan had the list, and he would sit down with Mr. Trump, and they would go through it before the checks were prepared.
And so, was part of your anger also at Mr. Weisselberg for allowing your bonus to be cut?
Yes.
What was Mr. Weisselberg's response to you at that time to the anger that you expressed to him?
Take it easy. You know that Mr. Trump loves you. We are going to do right by you. We will make sure that. We are going to make sure that you are taken care of. Just go. Enjoy your vacation. Relax. We are going to do. We will make this right.
And did he tell you when it would be made right?
After the holiday, when everybody returned to the office.
What was your understanding about whether your impact withdrawn? What was your understanding about whether your anger had any impact on Mr. Weisselberg?
I think it did in light of all of the things that had just been involved with and helped to resolve. I was, even for myself, unusually angry.
Did you complain to a few other people also about your anger about not being repaid and also having your bonus cut?
I'm sure I did.
Do you know whether you expressed your upset with David Pecker?
I'm sure I did.
Do you recall specifically any conversation with David Pecker about your end-of-year bonus?
Yeah.
Can you just tell the jury a little bit about that, what you recall?
Yeah. I engaged him in conversation. Could you believe this? I mean, it's like after all of this and laying out $130,000 to protect him, this is the best that I get, and I couldn't believe it. Yes, really. It wasn't even so much about the number as much as it was about the sort of respect that came with it, and I was just personally insulted.
Did you ask Mr. Pecker to help you with it?
I don't recall.
Did you also complain to Keith Davidson about it at some point? Do you remember having a phone call with him?
I might have had a phone call with Keith Davidson.
Also complaining about the situation?
I may have mentioned it. I'm not so sure that Keith Davidson and I didn't really know each other than his representation of Ms. Clifford and Ms. Daniels, whereas David Pecker I had a much longer relationship with. So I'm not sure that I was complaining to Keith Davidson as much as I probably just mentioned it.
Now, did you go away with your family on holiday?
I did.
And did Mr. Trump call you while you were on vacation?
He did.
Can you tell the jury a bit about that conversation?
He called me just before New Year's just to say, hello, how are things going? Are you enjoying the vacation? Next year, you should come to Mar-a-Lago. Don't worry about that other thing. I'm going to take care of it when we get back.
What did Vo understand him to mean by that?
What he meant was the 2/3 diminution in the bonus.
Did he mention it all? What, if anything, did he mention about any conversation that he had with Alan Weisselberg?
That he spoke to Alan and that he knows that I was angry, but it's going to. We will take care of it when we all get back.
Now, after you had returned to the office, after your holiday, did there come a time in January of 2017 when you had a meeting with Mr. Weisselberg concerning the repayment of the $130,000 that you had gave to Stormy Daniels?
Yes.
Tell us how that came about.
Well, it's now after the new year, and I had laid out this money with the understanding that it was going to be paid back to me, how I was going to be reimbursed for this, and there was no conversation about it. So I, of course, brought it up to Mr. Weisselberg to ask, when am I getting the money back?
And what, if anything, did he say about trying to resolve that with you?
So he said to me, let's sit down, let's meet, and let's do it.
What, if anything, did he ask of you to provide to him?
So he asked for me to bring him a copy of the statement showing the $130,000 transfer.
And?
From First Republic Bank.
And did he say anything to you at all about, in connection with that meeting or in that conversation about settling things globally and the position that you wanted?
Yes, because we were. Not only was it about the position, but also about other matters that were still open and outstanding, for example, the bonus, as well as an issue with a company called Red Finch.
Did you provide him with a document showing the transfer of the $130,000 to Keith Davidson for Stormy Daniels?
Yes.
And did you say it was a bank statement from First Republic Bank?
Yes.
Can we put up People's Exhibit 35, please, in evidence? Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
This is the bank statement for Essential Consultants for the period of October 26th of 2016 through the 31st of October of 2016.
What does it show?
This is the document that I gave to Alan.
What does it show, this document?
It shows the deposit of $131,000 and the withdrawal of $130,035.
Does it show where the payment went to?
It does.
What does it show?
It shows domestic wire funds debit to Keith M. Davidson Associates PLC.
And this is a document that you gave to Mr. Weisselberg without the handwriting initially?
Correct.
So let's look at the handwriting now. Whose handwriting is at the bottom, right?
That's my handwriting.
And whose handwriting is at the bottom left and middle?
That's Alan Weisselberg's.
And how were you able to recognize Alan Weisselberg's handwriting?
Well, I recognized the handwriting, but I was also there in the room when he was writing it.
Over the years, you've seen his handwriting and you've watched him write on this document?
Yes, ma'am.
Now tell us what Alan Weisselberg told you at the meeting, including what he told you to write on that document.
So for tech services that were done, and it's regarding a different type of a matter, one that I had gone to Mr. Trump with on a regular basis it was to purchase IP addresses and things like that. The total that was due to Red Finch was $50,000, but that was actually done 2 years earlier.
So what, if anything, did Mr. Weisselberg tell you about what to put down about those monies that were owed to Red Finch from 2 years earlier?
Include everything as... Obviously, I was no longer going to have a position at the Trump organization. There was no way for me to get that money back or to have this matter done.
What, if anything, did he tell you to do in terms of totaling the monies owed to Red Finch and the monies that you had paid out to Stormy Daniels to Keith Davidson?
So the $130,000 was obviously the money that went for the non-disclosure agreement. He told me to add up the $130 with the $50,000 for Red Finch. Total it to $180,000. $35 was lost. That was just a wire transfer fee. Then he told me what he was going to do was it's called gross it up because I was taking it as income. And in order to get back the $180, you need to actually double it because of tax purposes, being I was in the 50% tax bracket, city, state, and federal. So in order to get back the $180, what he did was he then wrote down $360,000.
Did he tell you that he wanted to gross up that number $180,000 to $360,000?
Yes.
And what was your understanding about why he said he needed to gross it up to $360,000?
Because otherwise you wouldn't get back your 180. Would be obviously less. If they gave me the 180 and they didn't gross it up after taxes onto it, it would be 90. Then that's, again, assuming that you take it as income as opposed to just a wash.
Let me back up just for a second. You were familiar with paying expenses for something, in other words, the Trump organization. Did you ever pay out any expenses for a business trip or something like that?
Yes.
And when you submitted it to the Trump organization, if you laid out $100 as an expense, what did you get back?
$100.
So it was not grossed up. The reimbursements were not grossed up generally from the Trump organization, to your knowledge?
Correct.
And was it Alan Weisselberg's idea that it should be grossed up to $360,000?
And that it should be taken as income.
And so, was it his suggestion that you take it as income instead of a reimbursement?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned Red Finch. The payment plus the $50,000 to Red Finch. And I think you mentioned that it was some services that a tech company had provided to Mr. Trump?
Yes.
And you said it was a couple of years earlier?
Yes, it was earlier.
And had they completed the work for Mr. Trump?
They did.
And had you discussed with Mr. Trump the work that was done and completed and that he owed Red Finch $50,000?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he decide to pay Red Finch the money that they were owed?
No.
And briefly, without describing details, why did he tell you that he didn't want to pay them?
Because he didn't feel that he had gotten the benefit of what he wanted, which dealt with the ranking.
Now, did you end up paying out some money yourself to Red Finch?
I did.
How did that come about?
So I happened to know the CEO of Red Finch, and he explained to me that this isn't fair. I'm out money. I had to acquire. Lay out money for the IP addresses that we were obtaining and requesting. And each time that I needed to go back for more, I would go to Mr. Trump's office asking and requesting that he give me the permission. And so I said to him, I said, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of you. I needed him for other things that I was working on for Mr. Trump's benefit. And so I went to my bank and I took out money to give him because he told me he was going to be coming into New York from Virginia.
And did you pay him the full $50,000? That was the bill?
No, ma'am.
And given that you didn't pay him the whole $50,000, why did you put down $50,000 on there?
Well, for the previous year and a half, I had told Alan, look, I laid it out. My hope was to get it, the money from Alan onto it, so that I can give it to him. But it never happened, but I constantly reminded him because I did want him, to receive the funds.
Did you pay Red Finch less than $50,000?
I did.
Okay. And why did you then ask for $50,000 back?
Because that's what was owed, and I didn't feel Mr. Trump deserved the benefit of the difference.
And if you were going to get $50,000 but you paid out less than $50,000, were you going to keep the rest of it for yourself?
That's what I ended up doing.
And just to go back to one thing, was Alan Weisselberg able to approve the repayment to Red Finch for $50,000 without Mr. Trump's approval?
No.
Now, was there another piece to this repayment to you? I think where we left off, you said that Mr. Weisselberg said you needed to gross up the $160,000 to $360,000 to make it look like income. Is that right?
Correct.
Was there something else that you were going to be?
Yes.
What else?
In addition to the bonus that he had already been previously given to me of $60,000.
And what did he tell you about that $60,000 additional bonus?
That this is the best that he's going to get. And
did he say anything about trying to make it right because your bonus had been cut?
yes, though it was still short of what I expected, but he thought that this was going to be an amount that would make it right.
So in addition to grossing up the 180 to 360, added on to that was another $60,000 for some additional bonus?
Correct.
And what was the total that he wrote? So is that those calculations on the left side by Mr. Weisselberg?
They are.
And that's his handwriting?
It is.
So what? Can you just tell the jury about the additions and the calculations there that Mr. Weisselberg wrote?
So you take 360 and add 60 to it, it was 420,000.
And what, if anything, did he indicate about the 420,000 at that point, if anything?
Well, he didn't at that point. It was only after we had spoken to Mr. Trump about the 420,000, which obviously I realized that they had already spoken.
Before you get to that, just one question. I apologize. I just want to go back to something on the issue of Alan Weisselberg telling you that they were going to gross up the 180 that you had put out, or stated that you had put out as an expense, of grossing it up to 360,000, so that it would appear to be income. What was your understanding about Mr. Weisselberg's background in terms of accounting and taxes?
He's not a CPA. He has been Mr. Trump's CFO for well over 4 decades.
And as chief financial officer, what is your understanding about whether he oversaw the accounting department at the Trump organization?
He oversaw every aspect of the accounting department.
And to your knowledge, did he also work with outside tax accountants?
He did.
And based on that, and your knowledge of working with him over the years, what's your understanding about his knowledge about taxes and accounting?
He certainly knows more than I do.
What, if any, understanding do you have about why he grossed that reimbursement up to 360,000?
I didn't know. And to be honest, I didn't really even think about it. I just wanted to get my money back.
Now, at the end of the conversation that you just had with Alan Weisselberg, did you believe that you were, or think that you were going to get that 420,000 back in one lump sum?
Yes.
Okay. And following the meeting with Mr. Weisselberg and both of you adding that handwriting to People's 35, what did you do and where did the two of you go at that time?
We went to Mr. Trump's office in order to speak to him about this.
Now, when was this approximately?
Right before Mr. Trump left for the inauguration.
So was he still at Trump Tower at that time?
Yes.
What did you understand he was engaged in at Trump Tower at that time?
Being president-elect.
Was he at meetings at Trump Tower?
Yes.
Now, what happened when you went into Mr. Trump's office to have this discussion with him?
During the conversation, Alan turned around and said to me, while we were talking about this, it was. And what we're going to do is we're going to pay you over 12 months. It was probably better if I get it in one lump sum. No. Why don't you do it as over 12 months and it will be, paid out to you monthly?
And did he say anything about how it would be paid out as something?
Yeah, as like a legal service rendered since I was then being given the title as personal attorney to the president.
And we will get to that in a second. So was this conversation that you had with Mr. Weisselberg in Mr. Trump's office with Mr. Trump?
Yes.
And did Mr. Weisselberg have with him this document, People's 35?
He did.
And did he show this document to Mr. Trump?
Yes.
And did Mr. Weisselberg say in front of Mr. Trump how much you were going to be paid in total?
It was going to be divided by 12, and it's $35,000 a month. And that they would actually start making the payments in February, not January, because there was a lot going on with Mr. Trump moving to D.C., the inauguration, and so on.
And did Mr. Weisselberg reflect those payments over 12 months on that bank statement? People's 35.
Yes.
And can you just read what that says there in the middle or the bottom?
It says 420,000 divided by 12. That's an equal sign. And that's 35,000. And that's per month.
And so was it stated. Did Mr. Weisselberg state in front of Mr. Trump that you were going to receive 420,000 over the course of 12 months?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Trump say at that time?
He approved it, and he also said, this is going to be one heck of a ride in D.C.
And did Mr. Weisselberg say in front of Mr. Trump that those monthly payments would be, like a retainer for legal services?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned something before, but I just wanted to question you about it. Did you say something to the effect of that you had the sense that they had spoken about this previously?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because they always played that sort of game of frickin' frack type game, and I didn't. I had been around that office more than enough to realize that this conversation had already taken place between the two. And when I asked for the 420, Mr. Trump said, no, it's better to do it over the 12 months.
And?
Your Honor, objection to that answer and move to strike.
Overruled, overruled.
And when Alan Weisselberg laid out the plan of how much you were going to get paid, and over what months, and showed Mr. Trump this document, did Mr. Trump try to renegotiate?
No.
So he approved it at that point?
Yes.
Now, at some point, did Mr. Trump confirm to you that he was going to give you the title of personal attorney or personal counsel to the president?
Yes.
When in relation to this meeting was that?
Around the same exact time.
Okay. And did you have a conversation just between yourself and Mr. Trump about that role during that time?
I mean, we've had conversations.
Did Mr. Trump indicate to you that he was giving you the title?
Yes.
Was it in this meeting or shortly after this meeting?
Yes.
One or the other?
It was one or the other.
The 420,000 that you were going to receive back from Mr. Trump going to be payment for future legal services as personal counsel?
That was what it was designed to be.
Well, what was it actually?
Reimbursement of my money.
It was. It was a repayment of which monies?
It was a repayment of the Stormy Daniels payment, as well as, again, you had the bonus and then the Red Finch money.
Now, you said that you believed that this occurred at Trump Tower some days before Mr. Trump actually left for Washington. Is that right?
Correct.
And do you have a sense of, based on some of your phone records about when this meeting occurred, about the grossed-up reimbursements?
Yes.
And also in connection with that, you would be given personal counsel to President Trump?
Yes.
And as a result of that, did you look at some of your phone records as well?
That's correct.
So let's pull up, please, People's Exhibit 250 in evidence, please. I'm sorry, okay? Can you make that a little bit bigger? Thank you. What is this text, Mr. Cohen? Who is it with?
This is a text message on January 17th from me to a gentleman named Gene Friedman, who was the manager or the operator of my yellow cab medallions in New York City. And I wrote to him, thank you. I leave tomorrow for D.C., and just between us, I will be personal counsel to President Trump.
And does that help you date the time of this meeting that you had with Alan Weisselberg and Donald Trump when you talked about the 420,000? And in connection with you, were you also at that meeting shortly thereafter being given the title personal counsel to Mr. Trump?
Yes.
I want to just go back to one question that I neglected to ask you. That document that we looked at, People's Exhibit 35, which contained the calculations that Alan Weisselberg did to get you from 180 to 360, and adding the bonus and so on. Did Mr. Weisselberg ever give you a copy of that document after all the handwriting had been put on it?
No.
What, if anything, did you know that he did with that document? If you know.
I believe he put it in a file.
And so is your sense that, based on this document and perhaps another one, did you have a sense of the approximate timing of the meeting that you had with Alan Weisselberg and Donald Trump about the reimbursement?
Yes.
What's your approximation of when it was?
January 17th.
And could it have been the day before? Do you know for sure, based on this, whether it was the 16th or the 17th?
It could have been the day before, and the reason I say that is because I spoke to Gene Friedman on a very regular basis.
And you told him on the 17th that you were going to be personal counsel?
Correct.
Did you also go on the Sean Hannity show the next day, on January 18th, and announce that you were going to be personal counsel to the president?
I did.
Can we just pull up People's Exhibit 251 in evidence as well, please? Do you recognize that?
I do.
And can you tell us what those texts meant? That text message is about.
This is a text message from a gentleman named Steve Denari to me, stating that he'd just seen me on Hannity and saw the announcement. Congratulations on being President Trump's look forward to personal counsel. His word, consigliere speaking with you further after the inauguration.
And does that also date for you that you made that announcement on the Hannity show on January 18th?
Yes.
Now, did Alan Weisselberg ask you to? Or did he tell you or discuss with you when you would be repaid those monthly payments for the reimbursement of the $420,000?
Yes.
What did he say?
That it would start in February, because with the trust and with the movement going on of Mr. Trump going to D.C., it's going to just take a little bit of time to get things moving, so just be patient.
Did he indicate something that you should do in terms of submitting something to get paid at some point?
Yes, but
Go ahead.
what he stated to me is each month, just send an invoice to us and just mark down for legal services rendered pursuant to the agreement, and we will get you a check out.
Now, after Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump gave you the title of personal attorney to the president before you left. Did you have a conversation with him about whether you would be compensated for any legal work that you might do for him in the future in that role?
No.
Did it come up at all whether, if you did some work, whether you would be paid for it?
I mean, when he said to me, yeah, whatever you end up doing, just take it easy on any bills, he goes. But I knew what he was referring to. He had given me this title, his personal attorney, and I was proud to accept that title, which I wanted, so I knew that there would be no compensation for any of the other work.
And so did you have any expectation that if you did work for him, you would be paid?
None at all.
And from your perspective, how were you essentially getting paid for that title?
By monetizing the role as personal attorney and creating consulting agreement relationships.
Now, are you aware that when attorneys represent a client and receive compensation for work, that they are required to put together either a retainer agreement or a written engagement letter?
Yes.
And did you ever put together any sort of a retainer agreement for any future work that you might do for Mr. Trump as personal attorney?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because I knew there was going to be no compensation.
And did the $420,000 that you received have anything to do with being a payment for future work that you might do for Mr. Trump as personal attorney to the president?
No.
Judge, is this a good time to break?
Sure. We will stop now.